I've been saying for years that baseball should have an award show between the end of the regular season and the beginning of the playoffs. Do you know who really agrees with me now? Aaron Judge.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please, where's my lower third? There it is. Call me Sully. I've been a baseball podcaster for a while now, and I have now finished 6 full seasons here at the Locked On Podcast Network, and I can't wait to start my 7th. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram, and today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. You could start the season big with a big return on FanDuel now. Customers can place a $5 bet and get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I'm recording this on the evening of November 3rd. It'll probably drop sometime after midnight. And just full disclosure, as I'm recording this, ESPN is currently announcing the winners of the Gold Gloves. And they have not announced all of them yet. They have still waiting to hear from the National League Gold Glove winners for the outfield. I got to be honest with you for the first time, because I've lied to you up for these first 6 years. I've never really been that invested in the Gold Gloves. Maybe it was the year that Rafael Palmeiro won the Gold Glove when he only played like 20 games in the field as a DH for most of the year. Maybe I just felt like it was a little bit of a subjective award. I mean, all of them are somewhat subjective, but I'd like to think they're using some numbers or some sort of system to do it. I guess they're using more advanced defensive metrics to figure it out. But the Gold Gloves have never meant that much to me. It's like, oh, they're a Gold Glove outfielder, a Gold Glove. Okay, great, good for them. It's not been something that gets me on the edge of my seat. And it's the same thing with the Silver Slugger. And you know it's the case because whenever I play Immaculate Grid, there are 3 things that drive me crazy. When they talk about like 40 career WAR, I have no idea who's a 40 career WAR player. So I just think, well, who was really good for a while and good at more than one thing? And I usually come out all right. And then Gold Gloves and Silver Sluggers. And I just kind of go, oh boy. You know, there's some obvious ones, you know, Ozzie Smith won it a bunch, Benito Santiago won it a bunch, you know, but I'm like, oh boy, what are the obscure ones? I'm sure someone named Frazier won one in the infield. Maybe Todd Frazier, maybe Frazier Crane. I don't know. But the Gold Gloves have never been an award that I get really jazzed up about. You know, good for you if you win. But I do love the baseball awards. And we're going to, you know, I mentioned who they were before the playoffs started. And I've said in that day between the end of the regular season and the beginning of the playoffs, there should be a ceremony where they hand them out. Now, they can't give them all out in person. I would love it to be at like the Kodak Theater in downtown LA. And there's Aaron Judge and Shohei Ohtani and everyone dressed in their tuxedos, and you know, Kevin Hart presents an award, Bryan Cranston presents an award, you know, J-Lo will come out in a cool Yankee hat or something like that. Mary Hart's going to be there, you know, she loves her Dodgers. But the reason I think it should be then is because every year when they hand out the awards, they have to have that caveat. These were voted for before the end of the regular season. So they have the votes in. They have them all in. If you can tally all the states that are going to vote tomorrow, I swear I'm not going to get political, then we can tally the writers who voted for all the different awards. And then before the playoffs begin, you announce them. Announce them. And you could have it be a virtual, I don't know, but have a fun ceremony. Have it a big show. Have it a big spectacle. Have lots of celebrity interviews. Have lots of old baseball players come out. Turn it into some sort of a spectacle. You know, if they could turn the NFL draft into something, which is just in the 6th round, the Buffalo Bills pick a linebacker from Psychotic State, Mark Gulasarian. My apologies to Mark Gulasarian, who I went to middle school with. I couldn't think of another name. Gulo, we called him Gulo. But, have something there where we go into the postseason, not saying the presumptive MVP, the presumptive Cy Young Award winner, this, that, or the other thing. We know, they won the Cy Young. They won the MVP. And the reason why I brought up Aaron Judge is because unless there is a massive upset and Bobby Witt Jr., who, by the way, earned himself a Gold Glove today, wins the MVP, it's going to Aaron Judge. It is. And what are we going to remember Aaron Judge for this year? Seriously, what are we going to remember him for? Are we going to remember him for his phenomenal season that he had? Are we going to remember him for the fact that he chased 60 home runs again? Are we going to remember that when the Yankees had a massive slump in the middle of the season, it was Aaron Judge and his bat that kept the Yankees afloat? Is that what anyone's going to remember? Is anyone going to remember his tremendous all-around play? No. They're going to remember that he wet the bed in the postseason. He was swinging and missing at anything that was thrown towards him. He got that big home run against Cleveland to tie in the game-tying rally, to be sure. But even in the final World Series game, where he got on base 4 times, not a soul will remember that. Not a soul will remember that he hit a massive home run early in Game 5. What are they going to remember? Clank. Clank off the glove. If they may remember the fact that he was dreadful in the first 2 rounds and the first few games of the World Series. An absolute automatic out. But he was carried by Stanton. He was carried by Juan Soto. And then when he clanked it off his glove, they're going to show that rally a lot. That's going to make the highlights of the biggest collapses in the World Series, at least in a World Series game, or at least in a World Series clincher. And what are they going to show? Clank off the glove. And when he is presented his American League Most Valuable Player, the man who is the captain of the New York Yankees, a man who should be celebrating the fact that he can now remove himself from the list of Yankee greats who never played in a World Series, which right now I think that list is Don Mattingly. Because a lot of players, even those who didn't win a World Series as a Yankee, like Bobby Mercer or Mike Mussina or Jason Giambi is another one. At least they got to play in a World Series with the Yankees. But Aaron Judge finally got to play in one. You like sabermetrics? He led the league in WAR. You like traditional stats? He damn nearly won the Triple Crown, leading the league in home runs, RBI, walks, on base, slugging, OPS. He batted .322. Hell, he even stole 10 bases. No one's going to remember that. And he'll know that when he's handed the trophy for American League Most Valuable Player. He's going to look at it like, yeah, it's going to be bittersweet, especially because this is award number 2 for him. It's like, yeah, I've done the individual thing already. And no one's going to remember this. How do I know this? People still bring up A-Rod's bad postseasons that he had with New York. In fact, So few people remember the fact his 2009, he practically carried the Yankees to the title. The lone title won with Derek Jeter as the captain was on so many ways won on the bat of Alex Rodriguez, who hit huge home runs in all three of the rounds, finally showed up. But he bombed badly in the 05 playoffs. He bombed badly in the 07 playoffs against Cleveland with the midges all over Jawba. And those 2 years, he won the American League MVP. The Yankees are not making the postseason in 05, if not for A-Rod. Same thing with 07. And yet people remember him as being a failure of those years. And Judge, it's not fair. It's not fair to Judge. Ironically, people will judge the man. And the fact that his brilliant career, he's a 205 hitter in the postseason. His slugging is 450. And he had a weak World Series, a weak ALCS, a weak Division Series. In 2022, he had a horrible ALCS against Houston, had a mediocre Division Series. He only got one hit in the wild card game in 2021. He batted 143 in the playoffs in 2020. You know, he bombed badly in a lot of his postseasons. And it's not going to be fair. But if you're handing him at the beginning, yeah, I'm the MVP, and now we got another thing we have to do. Plus, it'll be fun television, I think. But they don't do it. When we come back, I'm going to remind you of some of my picks that I made before the postseason. And I stand by them, even though some of them did not necessarily come up big in October. All right, your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have time to go to a doctor's office and get treated for ED. Through HIMShims, you get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. HIMShims is changing men's healthcare by providing you access with affordable sexual health treatments in the comfort of your home. HIMShims provides access to a range of doctor-entrusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and they're generic for up to 95% cheaper prices. The process is 100% online, and so there's no need to feel uncomfortable at a doctor's office. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, HIMShims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at HIMS.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment option. HIMS.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See websites for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based upon product and subscription plan. All right, I'm going to check to see. As you can tell, I'm absolutely glued to who the hell is winning the Gold Gloves. Did they announce the outfielders yet? Yes, they did. All right, so let's run it down. The National League Gold Glove winners are Patrick Bailey of the Giants, Christian Walker of the Diamondbacks, Bruce Turang of Milwaukee, Ezekiel Tovar of the Colorado Rockies is the shortstop, Matt Chapman is the third baseman. By the way, I did mention that Christian Walker's first base, Bryce Turang at second base, Ezekiel Tovar shortstop, Matt Chapman third base with the Giants. Left field is Ian Happ of the Cubs. Brenton Doyle of Colorado is in center field. Sal Frelick of Milwaukee is in right field. Chris Sale of Atlanta. Why can't the Red Sox get players like him? Is for pitcher. And Jared Trujillo is the utility player for the Pittsburgh Pirates. In the American League, Cal Raleigh, one for catcher. Veteran Carlos Santana of Minnesota. Cal Raleigh of Seattle. Carlos Santana of the Minnesota Twins is at first base. Andres Jimenez of Cleveland is at second base. The aforementioned Bobby Witt Jr. at shortstop. Alex Bregman, who I believe is a free agent, is at third. Stephen Kwan of the Guardians in left. Dalton Varsho of Toronto in center. Wilyer Abreu of Boston is in right field. And Seth Lugo of Kansas City is the pitcher. Well, there you go. It's good for them. No, seriously, fantastic for each one of them. And these were because where you have each award has their finalists. So these were my awards. The comeback player of the year, I have for the American League, Carlos Rodon, I have as my comeback player of the year. My other nominees are Garrett Crochet and Tyler O'Neill. My comeback player in the National League is Chris Sale. I can't imagine anyone else getting it other than him. My other two were Luis Severino and Hunter Green. Luis Severino had a great comeback, but Chris Sale went from being an afterthought and basically being dumped by the Red Sox. And to be fair, I thought, well, they may get a major league second baseman out of him. I thought his career was over. So that is a true comeback player. Manager of the year. In the American League, I have Stephen Vogt of Cleveland, AJ Hinch of Detroit, and Matt Quattro of the Kansas City Royals are my top three. In the National League, Pat Murphy of San Diego is my winner, along with Mike Schilt and Rob Thompson. And just a quick note, this is another example of why, by the way, when I say Pat Murphy, I mistakenly said of San Diego. He's the manager of the Brewers. Mike Schilt is the manager of San Diego. I just mixed them up when I was just looking at my paper. Notice that this is not a postseason award. So obviously, Dave Roberts managed his butt off and was outstanding. And if we included the postseason in these awards, I'd give Dave Roberts, who had to juggle a pitching staff that was non-existent. But I don't even have him as one of my finalists here. Another example of people would look at that going, where's Dave Roberts? They won the World Series. Rookie of the year. I have Mason Miller of Oakland winning it all, with Luis Heel and Colton Cowser rounding it out. In the National League, Jackson Merrill of San Diego is my winner, with Paul Skeens at number 2 from Pittsburgh and Jackson Chourio of Milwaukee. My Cy Young Award winners. This is another great example of why you got to do these before the playoffs. Tarek Skubal is my winner for the American League Cy Young. In second place, I have Seth Lugo. And at third, Emmanuel Clase, who had as good a year as you could possibly have as a reliever and as much of a nightmare of a postseason as a relief pitcher can have. Your memories of Clase will be him absolutely stinking up the dump in the playoffs. And yeah, filed that against both Detroit and New York. He's probably worn out. What are you going to do? In the National League, my Cy Young Award winner is Chris Sale. Vaughn Grisham, you better pull it out there. Zach Wheeler of Philadelphia and Dylan Cease of San Diego wind it down. In the National League for the most valuable player, tough to argue that Shohei Ohtani is at the top. Francisco Lindor is at number 2 from the Mets. And I have Ketel Marte of Arizona as my third place. Where's Freddie Freeman? I told you these are not postseason awards. And of course, my MVP, I have 1, 2, 3, Judge winning it, Bobby Witt Jr. at number 2, and Juan Soto at number 3. And it's a very bittersweet, you know, Bobby Witt Jr. looked around, hey, I got my gold glove out of it. Juan Soto, who has 1 foot out the door, please stop trying to read the tea leaves. I don't think he'll go to Los Angeles because they don't like working with his agent. I heard he didn't like San Diego. Why would he go to here? I think he wants to play on the East Coast. He will go to the place that offers him the most money. And if that's in Seattle, it's in Seattle. If it's in Sacramento, it's in Sacramento. If you want Juan Soto, find out what the highest offer he got was and add $1 to it, and he will be yours. And there's nothing wrong with that. The man earned it. But it will be bittersweet. You know it. I know it. When Aaron Judge collects that trophy and looks at it and goes, yeah, this is great, but I would trade this in a heartbeat for a couple more hits in October. Remove that confusion. Take away anything bittersweet. Have that day before the playoffs be a celebration of the season we just saw, and I think we'll all have a fun time watching it. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 back in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets and the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Let's take a look at some comments I've got over the last day. When I talked about the Garrett Cole opting out of his contract, Dr. Loomis 7260, obviously a big fan of the movie Halloween. Get rid of Cole, please. I'm guessing this is a Yankee fan. Get rid of Cole, please. I've been saying it for years. He's not made for New York. He's a bum. We can get 4 good pitchers for his price. Dr. Loomis, I'm going to give you a pass. You're a bit angry. Your team just lost the World Series, and it stinks. The man won the Cy Young Award last year, leading the league in almost every major category. The year before, 2022, again, 200 innings pitcher, led the league in strikeouts. He's led the league in complete games and wins. In another year, he has, since arriving in New York, he's been there for 5 years. In 3 of them, he has been a top 5 Cy Young contender. I think he's done fine. He actually pitched very well in the World Series. He pitched a 12 2/3 innings, which is averaging just a little more than 6 innings per start. He should have gone more. He struck out 10 batters. He walked 4. His ERA was 0.71. Yeah, he failed to cover first. Doesn't make him a bum. But if you think you get 4 good pitchers for Garrett Cole, there you go. I've been talking a lot about how we need to start developing pitchers to pitch and not just have flamethrowers who blow their arm out. Because do you see this? This thing here, my arm, this was not designed to throw 100-mile-an-hour sliders. Our bodies get bigger and this gets bigger and that gets bigger, but the tendons aren't getting bigger, which is why they're snapping like crazy. Because we're starting with kids throwing, got to throw 100 miles an hour. Maybe teach people how to throw things other than fast. That was the thing I was preaching the other day. Jesus Garcia, RO RO7LC, I don't know what the RO7LC says, it's not going to change back to traditional starters. You could, he's referring to me, you could also do your part as well with your platform. Yes, I'm a very, very influential man. Go to your nearest Little League and tell the coaches to stop teaching kids to just throw their arms out till they fall off. Jesus, not sure if I want to be the dude who goes up to Little League teams where my kids are not playing and start telling the parents what to do. Not on my to-do list. I do know what you're saying. We got to start relatively early. But I also think we need to adjust what we're talking about here. The success of what kind of pitchers we're talking about. Now, I was thinking about this the other day. A lot of it comes down to innings pitched. Pitchers are being taken out of the game in the 5th or 6th innings, and I said before, has nothing to do with metrics. It has nothing to do with analytics. It's all about money. Ace pitchers cost the most. Create a world where you don't need ace pitchers. Take them out after the 5th or 6th inning. But then you see what we had. Every bullpen's gassed because you have to use a bullpen 4 or 5 innings a day, and you're using the same people. If you have a starting pitcher, you could get through the order a third time. Maybe you could give some of these relievers a breather. Now, in 2024, a grand total of 4 pitchers in all of Major League Baseball cracked 200 innings, and one of them just barely. Zach Wheeler was at 200 even. Now, I'm not going to talk about, Jack Chesbro winning 41 games in 1901 when he had a blazing fastball. It was nearly 80 miles an hour. We let our pitchers throw 9. We only use a relief pitcher if that's 40 runs. Now let's just go back 10 years. 10 years. Logan Gilbert this year led baseball with 208 2/3 innings pitched. 10 years ago, he would not have cracked the top 10. In fact, he was the 2 pitchers tied for the number 10 spot were John Lester and Jeff Samardzija, who were picked up in that year, both of them by the A's at midseason. Lester from the Red Sox, Samardzija by the Cubs. They threw 219 2/3 innings. And nearly 10 innings more, or no, more than 10 innings more than Logan Gilbert. But you look up and down. I'm not talking about ancient history. I'm talking about 10 years ago. David Price with 248 1/3 innings led it. Johnny Cueto, Felix Hernandez, Corey Kluber, James Shields, Adam Wainwright, Julio Teheran, and Max Scherzer all threw over 220 innings. Now, a lot of them were Cy Young contenders I just rattled off, but a couple of them weren't. A couple of them were classic innings eaters. In fact, if you go back, let's go all the way. Let's be Superman and spin the world backwards. If you go back to 2019, all the top 10s had over 200 innings pitched. Now, we know COVID happened in 2020. Obviously, no one's throwing a lot of innings then. We also know that there was coming back from COVID, and everyone had to kind of ramp up a little bit. So yeah, the innings were down a little bit. And in 2022, there was the lockout, so people were not getting up to speed. So you saw the number of 200 innings pitchers reduced to 8. But it's been a couple of years, and I think baseball saw, hey, wait a minute, these pitchers don't have to throw that much. But then we're seeing the results. And I'm not saying that pitchers need to emulate Bob Gibson or Tom Seaver. I'm not even talking about Hall of Famers here. I picked the one pitcher I think should be the kind of pitcher that baseball teams should be developing for a couple of reasons. David Wells. What's the first thing you think about with David Wells? Well, he's a wild child, big old belly, drinking a lot, hellraiser, bit of a trouble guy. Yes, all the above. And, obviously not taking good care of his body. to the point where he only pitched 21 years in the major leagues. Again, I'm not talking about a Hall of Famer here. Imagine if you had some pitchers who do what he does. Okay? In 1990, he was a spot starter for the Toronto Blue Jays. He would relieve, he would start, wound up throwing 189 innings. Okay. By 1995, he was a secure in the rotation guy, an all-star at 32. And by the way, pitched for another 12 years. And year in and year out, he would pitch anywhere between 203 and 95, 224 and 96, 218, somewhere between usually around like 215 to 200 innings a year. A couple of years, he would be great. Twice, he was a legit Cy Young contender. He was an all-star 3 times. But most of the time, he was good. Not great, good. Most of the time, he would average over a season, 6 1/3 innings, let up like 3 runs. But he also pitched to contact. If you have a combination of someone who's not just trying to throw their arm out of their socket, but trying to pitch to contact, and you have a team that has good defense and smart fundamentals, you could have someone like Wells pitching 6, 7 innings a game. He wouldn't have super high strikeout totals. He didn't average a strikeout an inning. He was never like a leader in the strikeout in the strikeout column. He had a great strikeouts to walk ratio, but in his 21 years in the big leagues, he never once cracked the top 5 in strikeouts and only twice cracked the top 10. And usually he would have a super low walk ratio. And yes, he would let up hits. Yes, he would let up some home runs. But if you have a good defense around him, he knows I'm going to throw a strike and trust my defense. And what he also would do? He would not run up a huge pitch count. Because if you're not walking a lot of batters, or if you're not striking out a lot of batters, and you're trusting your defense behind you, and your defense is hopefully good, then that miraculous thing can happen. You start winning games where your pitcher gets to the 7th, 8th inning, and his pitch total is not 138. It's called pitching. And you could outsmart. He would be one of those pitchers. Look at no one is accusing David Wells as someone who'd be going to Caltech, but he had pitching smarts. And maybe that's one of the things you have to do with pitchers is have them learn. Here's how you get through the order the 3rd time so we don't blow our pitchers out. He pitched on some teams that had fantastic bullpens. He pitched for those Toronto teams, which had Dwayne Ward and Tom Henke in there. And obviously he pitched with the great Mariano relieving him. In those years he played with the Yankees, his 4 seasons in New York. So he knew that if he was going to hand the ball back, he was going to be in good hands with the bullpen. And he had a couple of bad years. But most of the time, he threw a lot of innings, won a bunch of games, he handed the ball off to the bullpen. And if you had a bunch of pitchers like that who may not strike out a lot, so you don't have the high pitch count. They throw strikes, so sure, they'll let up home runs, but you also have good defense behind them. You don't have the high pitch counts, and you're not blowing out the bullpen. I'm not saying develop Cy Young Award winners. Develop classic innings-eating pitchers. David Wells obviously ate a lot of things in his life, but he also ate innings. When he pitched, chances are the bullpen would only be needed for about 2 1/3 innings. That's what he averaged, just about that throughout his career. This is what we should be aiming for. If you have 2 pitchers like that in your rotation, who you know are going to give you 6, 7 innings to start, and you have an ace, what you could have? arrested bullpen, provided you work on your defense and you work on the fundamentals. It's zigging when everyone's zagging. If every other team doesn't care about defense, doesn't care about the fundamentals, and they just care about pitchers who are hucking at 100 miles an hour, even in their changeups, then you should be coveting the people who go, hey, who can outsmart the team? And at the end of the year, be healthy enough to pitch in the postseason, which Wells did and earned himself an ALCS MVP for his troubles. All right. I don't like the state of pitching. I don't like where it's going. And you don't have to go to the distant past to see a time where it was being done better. Less than 10 years ago, it was being done better. Let's get back to that. All right, more awards are going to be announced this week. We're going to bring it on. And tomorrow's show is going to be presidential, but it's not going to be political. That I promise. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Wanting to hand out the awards when it does not have the stigma. This has been Locked On MLB. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.